Salutations, my dear friends, and you're with Spiritual Quotes. And once again, I have come back with wonderful variety of stories to share with you. So, let's begin, shall we? So, as you all may know, a Bible is a holy book of all Christians. So, this story is about a parable from the Bible. So, once upon a time, a rich master called his servants together before going to a long trip. He entrusted his money to his servants. While he was gone, he gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last. He divided it in proportion to their abilities. He then left on his trip. The servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earn 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how he had used his money. The servant who received 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, "Master, you have gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more." The servant was proud. So was the master. He was full of praise. "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." The servant who received 2 bags of silver came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more." The master appreciated the servant similarly. Next, the servant with 1 bag of silver turned up and said, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man harvesting crops. So you didn't and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here's our money back." The master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant! If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gather crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could get some interest on it." Then the master took away the money from his servant and gave it to the one with 10 bags of silver. To those who use well, and what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have in abundance. But those who do nothing, even what they have will be taken away. Well, that's a good story, wasn't it? Why don't we go to a little song break? And stay tuned, this is Spiritual Quotes. So, hello back and welcome back to Spiritual Quotes. So, once again, I have come with you to tell another story. So, you all might know that last time I told you about a parable from the Bible. This one is a story with the quotation from Quran, the holy book of Islam. That's very interesting, isn't it? So, why don't we dig into this? So, once upon a time, a blind boy sat on the steps of a building with a hat by his feet. He held up a sign which said, "I am blind, please help me." But, unfortunately, there were only a few coins in the hat. A busy man was walking by the building when he saw the boy. The man stopped, thinking for a second. He took out a few coins from his pocket and dropped them to the hat. Then he looked at the sign, turned it around, and wrote some words on it. He put the sign back next to the boy, and in such a way, everyone who passed the boy would be able to see the new words. Soon the hat began to fill up with coins. Many people were giving money to the poor blind boy. In the afternoon, the man who had changed the sign came to see how things were. The boy immediately recognized his footsteps and asked, "Aren't you the gentleman who changed my sign in the morning? And I want to know, what did you write?" The man replied softly that he had written the same sign but in a different way. His sign said, "Isn't it a beautiful day today? But I cannot see it." The second sign tells the people that they are also blessed and they are not blind. Oh men, pay heed to God's messages, for it is He who has endowed you with hearing, sight and mind. Yet how seldom are you grateful. Wow, what an interesting story. But there's more. This one is called Never Forget Your Mother and Your Father. This one is from another country called India, next to Sri Lanka. In ancient India, there once lived a sage named Shantanu and his wife, Gyanvati. Both were very old and blind. They had a virtuous young son called Shiva. The son devoted his whole life to look after his blind parents. He always made sure that he fulfilled every wish of his parents. One day, his parents told him, "Son, we are now very old and haven't got much time to live. We wish to go on a pilgrimage to holy places of India before we die." The son at once agreed to fulfill their wish. In no time, he made a cart, a beautiful and wonderful balance. He settled his parents in it, lifted up on his shoulders and walked for miles and miles. At every privileged state, he stopped and described everything to his parents. He was their sight. Shivan's pilgrimage lasted 7 long years on foot. Along the journey, he served his parents day and night, earning their blessings. One day, he reached a place near Ayodhya. His parents were very thirsty. He went to fetch a pot of water from the Sharu river to quench his parents' thirst. Meanwhile, the king, Dashratha, had come out of hunting. He heard a gurgling sound near the river as Shravan, the boy with blind parents, was filling the pot with water. Thinking that it must be an animal in the river, he pulled out an arrow and shot it in the direction of the noise. The arrow penetrated Shravan's chest and he shouted loudly in pain. Oh dear, what a very unfortunate thing to happen. So, realizing the king's mistake, he went running to the young boy. Shravan told the king that he came to the river and to fetch water for his blind parents. He was deeply wounded by the king's arrow. The injury was so fatal that he died before the king's very eyes. After, the king took the picture to Shravan's parents. They were unable to bear the shock of their son's death. The king bowed at their feet and begged for forgiveness. But both parents were so grief-stricken shortly afterwards. They left this veil of tears. The king's regret was unexplainable. So, what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is we should serve our parents until our very last breath. We should never act without thinking twice. So, that was interesting, wasn't it? Why don't we tune into a little song? And stay tuned, this is Spiritual Chords. Once again, I have come with you with the last story of this segment. It's called The Clark Family. So, years ago in Scotland, the Clark family had a dream. The Clark and his wife worked hard and saved money, making plans for their 9 children and them to travel to the United States. It had taken years, but finally saved the required money. They got their passports approved and made reservations for the whole family out on a new liner to the United States. And the entire family was filled with anticipation and excitement about their new life. However, 7 days before their departure, the youngest son was bitten by a dog. The doctor sewed up the boy, but hung a yellow sheet on the Clark's front door. So, what a tragic incident, isn't that? So, let's see what happened next. Because the possibility of rabies, they were quarantined for 14 days. Oh, that was really tragic, isn't it? The family's dreams were dashed. They would not be able to make the trip to America as they imagined and planned. Mr. Clark, filled with disappointment and anger, stomped to the dock to watch the ship without the Clark family. The father, also known as Mr. Clark, shed with tears. He shed tears of disappointment and cursed both of his son and God for the misfortune. 5 days later, the tragic news spread out through Scotland that the mighty, unsinkable Titanic had sunken, taking hundreds of lives in it. The Clark family was to have been on that ship, but they were left behind since the dog was bit by the youngest son. So they survived, that means. The ship has sunken without the Clark family, and they almost died if their son wasn't bit by a dog. When Mr. Clark heard the news, he hugged his son and thanked him and God for saving their family. He realized that one tragedy could be a disguised blessing. So, what's the moral of the story? Is that one tragedy could be a disguised blessing. So, that's the end of our segment. Stay tuned to Good News Radio, and the time right now is 2:43 p.m. Saturday, 31st of May 2025. So, that's the end of our segment. Hopefully, you would stay tuned to Good News Radio and tune with us next weekend. So, that's the end of it. Bye.